Hi guys, Jeremy from Ithaka Media here. Today I'm going to be talking about these Soviet lenses that I've been using on the original Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera. These lenses, they're taken from the Kiev 16mm Soviet cameras, and so that makes it really ideal for the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera because it's got a Super 16 size sensor. I've had about a week and a half to use it and to do a couple of tests with them. Overall, I'm pretty impressed with it. I like the look of them, but there's a few things I wanted to talk about. There's some upsides and some downsides as well. So the set has three lenses. There's a 12.5mm, a 20mm, and a 50mm. So let's start with the 12mm. This is the one I had the most problem with. When I was getting this is the one I was most excited for because of the crop factor on the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera. It's this 12.5 becomes a 35mm for the 35mm equivalent. So this is the widest of the lot. However, I seem to have a faulty lens, and the reason for that is I cannot focus to infinity unless it's stopped right down to f16. So it's alright using it in daytime, that's okay, but if you have to go basically to f11 or above, you're stuffed. You can't focus to infinity, and for what is meant to be a sort of wide angle lens, it's basically useless now because you can only use it in daytime. But that's okay. I will probably use it for some applications, but I can't really see myself including this in my kit. In saying that, I did like the look. It has this sort of soft texture, which is exactly what I was expecting, and it has that, you know, vintage look that you're after when you're looking for these kind of lenses. The build, quite light, so that's a plus when you're using it on the pocket. The pocket itself is light, so it makes for a really light build. Of course, I would not use this handheld. It's just a bad idea because I mean, the pocket has no real inbuilt stabilization anyway, and this lens just makes it all the more shaky. So I was using these tests on a monopod. Even that I think was probably too shaky. You do get some jilts and bumps, so I recommend using a tripod if you're using this. So even though I got a faulty one, I think as long as you got one that was you know, performed and was able to focus to infinity at all apertures, then you're sorted. I would get this lens. It's one problem I had with actually all the lenses is the it's a declicked aperture, which normally I would be okay with, but because it's so smooth and it's so close to the focus ring, it actually makes it difficult. When you're trying to focus, you might actually end up stopping down or changing the exposure just because your fingers brush against the iris ring. So that's something I'm not particularly impressed with. The 12.5mm is the only lens in this set that does not cover. So there's a slight vignette in the corners, which isn't too large, so you can actually crop it in a little bit and you don't lose too much quality. So it's not a big issue, but the other two do cover. The 20mm and the 50mm do cover. So moving on, this is the 20mm f2. It's the Vega 7. This is the one I was most impressed with. As you'll see in the footage, something you get is some chromatic aberration in the sort of corners and stuff like that, which I actually don't mind. Like I said, if you're going for a vintage look, that's what you're going to get. On the plus side, having a stiff focus ring makes for more precise focusing. However, when you're trying to focus between two subjects, it becomes quite difficult because these lenses have quite a long focus throw. Also very light, like the 12.5mm, so that makes it great for your kit. What happens with this lens is actually quite cool. It's almost got this like focus circle in the center, and then on the edges it softens out, which, like I said, creates this unique look. So this is the 50mm. Again, very small, very compact. If you look at the footage, quite soft on the edges. Actually reasonably sharp for a sharper than I was expecting, but that texture, that vintage texture that you're after, you will get from this lens. With all these lenses, they're all relatively fast. They open up to around f2, so that makes it a fairly versatile lens. You can use it in a couple of different settings. I myself used it in both daylight and a couple of tests at night in low light settings, and in both circumstances they look relatively good. So I was quite impressed with that. Minimum focal distance for the 50 and the 20 is quite long. So it's about a meter, just shy of a meter. It's about 90 centimeters, give or take. Not such a huge issue for me, but for those of you who are using it for macro applications, that's going to be an issue. So just a heads up for that. This lens set, most of these lenses you can find in a set of 3 or 2. They usually come with all of them, or you usually get the 20mm and the 50mm in a pack. I'd recommend getting all 3, so long as the 12.5mm can focus to infinity. I mean, I also obviously got a dud for that. One of the hardest things about these lenses is actually finding the adapter. It took me way longer to find the adapter for it than the actual lenses themselves. You can find the lenses really easily, but the adapter not so much. One thing with the adapter that I have is if you mount the lens too closely to the adapter, so too tightly, it actually makes it real difficult to focus because the focus ring sits right up against the back of this adapter. So, I mean, depending on what adapter you have, you want to have it not loose, but not wound too tightly so that the focus ring rubs up against that. I'll leave a link in the description for the adapter that I found. The adapter itself is fairly pricey. It costs about the same as the lens set cost for me, so about 100 Australian dollars. Well worth it though, I would say, even though I'm not going to be really using one of the lenses. I'm not going to really use the 12.5mm. The other lenses will definitely come in handy for certain projects that I'm after. I mean, if you spend $200, you've already got, you know, a set of 3 lenses that are different focal lengths, which is really handy. And, you know, like I said, relatively fast. You can use them in a few different environments. Just make sure you don't get gypped and actually get a lens that does focus to infinity, because if you can't focus to infinity, I mean, what's the point, you know? Thanks for watching, guys. If you like what you saw, just give us a like and subscribe, just so you can keep following on with the videos I'm going to be making in the future. I'm planning on making some more lens reviews and other gear reviews that I have in my kit. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. I'll try and answer them best I can. But until next time, all the best. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.